Hello there! As it is the norm in these second thoughts overviews, I've played through the initial turns, got a feel for the faction, and these are my conclusions. So in the end, as always, I'll give you some army compositions to try out on your own plays. Now this is not an in-depth guide, but it will definitely assist you in your gameplay. So let's go play with Valkia the Bloody. So for your short victory condition, you need to control the Spiteful Peaks and the Iron Foothills, basically two very nearby provinces, either directly, of course, or via vassals or military allies. You also need to control the settlements of the Palace of Ruin, located here, and the Frozen City. Basically, two also nearby settlements. Adding to this, of course, the typical Occupy, Loot, Razor, Sack, 35 different settlements. So, as it stands, it's kind of like dominating this whole northern area, really. So it's quite a straightforward campaign, getting rid of most of this area, and then it's a nice introduction to the campaign. And then, of course, you can decide where to go from there. Now, the reward is plus 30 wins of magic power reserve for all armies. Now, yes, I know that we are a Khorne-based faction, kinda, but still, it's a Warriors of Chaos. You do have casters in your army, so it's kind of useful. So it's an interesting campaign because you do have magic and Khorne units. Now, in terms of the long victory, it requires the short victory, of course, to occupy, loot, raise or sack 80 different settlements, and to control at least 13 of a very long list of important settlements. Now, these include mostly capitals and important ones from other legendary lords. It's a fairly lengthy campaign. For the most part, what I always advise is that you keep conquering, spreading out in several locations, and then if you see that you're close by, like if you have already 10 of these or 7 of these, then you try to aim for the end to gather the rewards and to finish off the long campaign, and then you can decide whether or not to continue to domination. Now, speaking of that reward, it's plus 10 Lord Recruit rank. It's excellent to ensure that they are quite good right at the start and that you can choose immediately some skills for them to be even more effective. Now, Valkia, she's the consort of the Blood God, so she benefits from having access to bloodletting. Campaign movement range is plus 15% after winning a battle to all characters, and the souls gained from sacrificing captives plus 50%. And also the vassals gain frenzy and spread Khorne corruption. So overall, great bonuses, very thematic. Just keep raising, very simple ones. Keep raising, keep fighting, keep moving, and sure your vassals do the same. Climate is as always not important to Chaos factions. You can go anywhere and conquer everything you wish, as always, perfect for an overall domination campaign. So your starting location is very defensible, and it is a 3-settlement province. So basically, of course, it's not that important for the Warriors of Chaos due to the Dark Fortress mechanic, really, but it's still nice to have some options, Typical expansion is quite easy, so you start off at the edge of the map. All you have to do is go towards the other end. Now, for the most part, going through the Dark Elves and other Norscan, Warriors of Chaos is certainly going to happen, and you may yet find yourself fighting against the Dwarves, Beastmen soon enough, even Silostri here, the High Elves. So yeah, that's where you're going to be fighting for the most part. It's such a defensible location. You're not going to be having to worry about covering any of these dark fortresses for quite some time, just because it's very easy to defend them. So, diplomatically, you are Chaos. Therefore, Norsca, other Chaos factions, Greenskins, if they survive, those will likely be your allies. Typical enemies will be the Dark Elves, because you do start at war with them, and you have to conquer some of their territory. High Elves, Dwarfs, Wood Elves, Vampires. You may have some even other Dark Elf friends, but for the most part, you'll have to conquer their lands anyway. So, outposts should go into any Norscan monsters or Greenskins artillery and missiles, as well as some of their monsters. You do have the infantry, so that's why I'm not recommending that, even though they have powerful infantry. But as always, it's up to you. These are just suggestions of the armies or units that I will try to get from these outposts for, some variety in compositions. Souls. They're a unique currency harvested by fighting anything that is not demons. So they're used for heroes and lords to achieve marks of chaos, and also for the gifts of chaos mechanic. let's speak about that one first. So basically, these are gifts that you can, a series of buffs that you can have active really that cost upkeep in terms of souls, and to unlock those you always have to reach out a specific amount of souls that are sent to Horn. Basically, after that, then you can unlock it. So the idea here is that you'll get some gifted units, such as for instance Bloodletters, such as for instance Chaos War Shrines of Khorne, or you can also get Skull Cannons, Soul Grinders, and even better, Bloodthirsters. So always very good units to complement your forces, really. And for the most part, of course, you can get, you know, just some income from post-battle loot, some decent buffs that you can use, okay? Specifically very good for the faction and how it plays out. Now, the other mechanic that interferes with the souls is actually, or that requires the souls, is actually the paths. The path to glory. So basically you can spend some souls to choose a path. In this case I'm going to choose the path to devote to Khorne, and what this does is, of course, it does make the hero an exalted hero, basically, of Khorne, okay? And that alone implies that it will have, you know, a little bit more of a different sort of line, because of course you're going to go into the juggernauts, you know, that sort of idea. And yeah, it's really cool to have some different heroes instead of the typical exalted heroes. You know, you can expand that as well, and you can have it more thematically, so they can expand, they can improve and become exalted heroes of you know, of Khorne, instead of just being the typical exalted heroes of chaos. Okay, so that's basically how it works. Then you have the Eye of the Gods that you can see here. So it offers a series of dilemmas based on the number of active gifts. So these offer powerful rewards, so be on the lookout for them. Now, Authority. It's a way to get cheaper upgrades and upkeep, as well as replenishment to a specific alignment. Okay, Undivided also counts as specific. It's a very straightforward way to customize your armies in the long run. Of course, with Valkia, the main idea is to go into Khorne-based stuff, of course, but it's still possible to mix these up with Undivided as well. And for the most part, you'll have research, and you'll have specific skills that will give you either Undivided Authority, or it will give you Khorne Authority, depending. Okay, now your units, they recruit instantly, so all that you need to is to wait for this pool to replenish, and then you can recruit them instantly, and then you can upgrade them into specific alignment, or you know, into Khorne, basically. Let me show you how that works. So you have the Warband upgrades. So for instance, I can turn these Marauders of Khorne into Marauders of Khorne dual weapons if I want. All that I need is to pay a little bit of cash, and now they are Marauders of Khorne. And of course I can go into the chosen, into the lines of Undivided as well, if I prefer, you know, if I want some of these units, but you can just go into the Khorne ones, really. It's pretty straightforward. You can choose which ones, and of course what you need to unlock is just the rank. So as soon as these guys are level 3, I can even go for Forsaken, you know. I can go after level 5, I can turn them into Chaos Warriors, and you can choose which one. So that's always very nice to ensure that you get some nice progression. One of the best mechanics they've added. Now, in terms of buildings, just a little bit to catch up, the only places that we can build everything is actually in these dark fortress sites. So not all sites or capitals are dark fortress sites, but there's plenty around so that you can, you know, enjoy that. Unluckily, for instance, Nagaron is not one, so that's kind of an issue. There should be more, but that's just balance stuff for CI to do. But still, there's plenty enough for you to have enough capitals, really, to recruit better units overall. Okay, now vessels are kind of like a mechanic in itself, because you're going to have so many. Right now I only have monk, but you're going to have so many. You can request their armies, you can build their outposts there. You know, I should be trying to get an outpost here just to get some units as well, and you can give them their orders. You're going to have so many here, or actually I already vassaled Gront because I've conquered them, really, and I vassaled them. So yeah, it's always a nice idea for you to get them going, you know, to get them to work with you towards the objective. And for the most part, the map is going to look like this. You're going to have your own regions, perhaps, but most of them on dark fortresses. Everything else can just be gifted to the vassals, and the vassals are the ones who are going to be conquering everything, really. Now, Valkia, finally, let's start in terms of the mechanics for Khorne. That's just one, basically, which is the bloodletting. So every army has this. You know, the more victories in battle, the stronger this will become. I was just reading there. And it gives you Khorne authority, Khorne corruption, enables replenishment in foreign territory, and more importantly gives you unit experience for your Khorne units. So this unit experience is what's going to allow the units to quickly progress and become much more powerful, you know, into the Chaos, into the Chosen, which is always great. And that's a very big mechanic, really. You know, it does imply that you can keep fighting and raising just like Khorne intended, so it's at least thematic for her, even though it's kind of sad it doesn't give you additional bonuses for replenishment or upkeep, but she kind of already has that with the authority. I guess it balances out by giving her some Khorne authority as well. So overall, very nice set of mechanics. All very simple. It's all meant to just make sure that you keep raising, keep sacking, keep wrecking, keep being Khorne. So in terms of edicts, you have a construction cost for all buildings reduced and Khorne corruption in adjacent provinces and your own. You have a sort of defensive one, campaign movement range for enemy armies there, enemy hero action success chance reduced as well, attrition reduced when you are under siege, and melee defense increase for your armies, which is always nice. Then you have a defensive against the plague, so basically chance of a plague spreading reduced for the armies in the province, recruitment costs reduced, and more melee attack for armies in the province. And one that you're going to be having for the most part, which is the less control but more local warband recruitment, replenishment for marauders of Khorne. You're always going to need marauders to upgrade to the others, basically, until you get to the buildings that offer you Chaos Warriors right from the start, you know. So at least that is important until the let's say not mid-game, the early mid-game, let's call it. And of course it also gives you construction costs reduced for all buildings. Now in terms of the army stances, there's a couple, just one new. So you have combat trials. It enables attrition and it gives you winds of magic reserve, and more importantly unit experience and character experience per turn. So if you don't mind the attrition for some time, you know, you can notice that this, for instance, let's pick on this, it will kill 4 units. On this unit of infantry it will take out 5, so I can keep a little bit of this, you know, and just gain some more unit experience and character experience per turn. So it's kind of a neat way to just get that edge of extra experience there. You also have in camp, which doesn't have the typical negatives here. It just enables replenishment foreign territory. It does cost 50% movement. Of course, the immunity to attrition is nice. Then you have raiding, which costs 25% movement and gives you immunity to attrition. But note that it doesn't give you souls. I believe it should be giving souls, but it's not. I'm unsure if it is supposed to. But what it gives is unit experience gain per turn, which is excellent as well. So if you don't want the combat trials, maybe you want to raid, and of course you're getting some more unit experience. Then you have ambush, which is interesting enough. It's different than for others because it gives you, so your ambush, you're hidden until discovered, but it gives you a penalty for leadership. I guess they dislike the treacherous ways, it seems. So your army doesn't like that, that your guys are in hiding instead of fighting. It's kind of nice. And then we have the march, you know, pretty straightforward ones.
The Gore Queen.
So in terms of buildings, it has a rather unique approach because of the warband upgrades mechanic. So what you unlock is actually the basic version of the unit to be easier to upgrade from that onwards. In essence, it also provides unit capacity for those units with other income buffs. So for instance, warband upgrades cost reduction here. Over here we have favor for all buildings, that sort of idea. Okay, you have 6 military buildings and infrastructure ones, so you can build all the military buildings in just one province by all means. But by the end of the, let's say, the first 3 dark fortresses, then you should have already enough military so that you can invest a little bit into infrastructure. Why? Because it has some good bonuses. Growth and casualty replenishment rate here. Then we have the favor generated and income from post-battle loot faction-wide and sacking settlements faction-wide, which is very important. You know, just a couple of these dark fortresses and you'll be getting a lot of income. And you also have the strategy chamber to getting control, corn corruption in the same province or adjacent provinces, which is always great, and income from old buildings as well, adjacent allied or vassal regions as well. So you'll be increasing your vassals as well, which is also relevant, especially with Norska. Make sure that you have this building when they have ports, because they get so much from ports. So yeah, that's also a good idea here. As for the minor settlements, they do provide some province-wide buffs, but occasionally you'll have resources. You can only build the resource building, but sometimes it's very important. Corn corruption for all regions is really cool, you know, to have. It's less of a problem to have. It's one big problem going away, so it's always excellent. Then we have the province ones that you can have, so Winds of Magic when increasing for the local province, casualty replenishment rate. You can have warband upgrades cost reduced by -20%. This is cool. At least have one of these around so that you can, at least when you're upgrading, it doesn't cost as much. Have magic item drop chance and souls gained from battles, so if you're focusing on the souls, by all means you can go for this one. And you sort of have a defensive one to get a little bit more of a defensive garrison here, you know, just an extra Chaos Warriors and Marauder Horsemen does ensure that you have a little bit more. So that's in terms of buildings. In terms of research, it changes for Valkia and the other champions of Chaos. So she has a unique tech tree, mostly around the mechanics of the faction, mostly around Corn authority, mostly around the path of glory, you know, to devote to corn is reduced. So you see that sort of idea, okay? And then specific abilities that focus on how the faction works, for instance, like giving revel in slaughter for aspiring champions, okay? And that sort of idea. You also unlock, for instance, the warband upgrades for Chaos Chariots, you see, or for instance the giving fear to aspiring champions in the divided chosen units. So all in all, very good buffs that you can get, you know. It includes some, you know, army abilities that are, you know, you remember from Corn, okay? So it's very interesting. By the time that you reach the end, your armies are really good, really powerful, and you can, you know, face anyone that you wish, basically. So it's very thematic, and I really love it. It does change what units get, so there are certainly a difference between all the Warriors of Chaos leaders in terms of how specific units end up being in the late game. So as always, we have your Lord specific buffs, your magic, in Corn it shouldn't be magic, your magic or combat skills, in this case of course specifically into the combat skills, have the red line or army buffs, and then have the blue line or campaign. Let's remember that authority is what gives you replenishment and upkeep reduction, but you also have some replenishment here in the blue line as well, combined with less attrition, which is really cool. And then you have the driven by rage here, more corruption, campaign movement range. That is if you wish to go into the blue line a lot. Now it does include some buffs for the units, so basically increased experience gain for units when fighting. It's against order only, but it's still very good to ensure that you can get all those chosen that you wish in the end, or those chaos knights if you wish. It also gives you souls gained from battles, which is great. You also have the lesser recruitment cost, and more importantly, the warband upgrades cost -10% for all units. So combining this with that building, then you have already 30% discount on the warband upgrades. Very important, so that you can keep having the units that you wish. Now, in terms of red line, is one of the best, really less expensive. They're streamlined into either mortal or demon units, so you can definitely pick out the combinations that you wish for, and have great combinations with very few skill points allocated. So overall, very good ones. Of course, Valkia does focus a little bit more, of course, on the chosen units, on the Chaos Warriors, Marauders, and Chosen, but it does only give them Vanguard deployment. Let's go into that in just a few moments. So these are the red line skills for the units of the Warriors of Chaos roster. It's the most extensive one. So yeah, in this case it's all directed to Khorne, because of course you're playing with Valkia. Now Valkia only gives like a nice Vanguard bonus. It's very effective, of course, Vanguard deployment for all Chosen in Chaos Infantry. Of course, it's really cool. Therefore, combinations using some variety of Chosen are in order here. So, Chosen's, of course, really cool, very thematic with going with just the Khorne variants here, just some inspiring champions for good measure, and then, of course, some Chaos Knights of Khorne, of course. Then we could go into more monsters or single entities using some giants, some Chaos War Shrines to buffer up, as if you needed the Chosen there. And then, of course, even something with more mobility, more variety, so with missile units and some artillery, just for, you know, having a bit of fun, if you wish, instead of, you know, only going into the Chosen, basically. You can definitely do the same thing with other Chaos Lords, because of course you do have some physical resistance, some missile resistance there, which is always nice. It makes them even more tanky, which they are already. And the same principle, you know, just having some more mobility. You do have some buffs there for the Chaos Knights, so they're much more tanky. So investing on the Chosen and the Chaos Knights is always nice, but always having, you know, just some little bit of flexibility, maybe having some Skull Cannons there. You can replace these with Soul Grinders if you choose. That's the sort of idea here, and still benefit from quite very few redline skills spent to buffer all of that. And then this is just practically just basically getting some additional sweeper armies, perhaps using more monsters instead, using a different variety, because it's still a Khorne army, but you can see how different and varied it can be, and that's precisely the point here. You know, just try out different combinations, see which one best applies to you. Maybe against specific enemies you'll be going to use one or another, and yeah, these are just even early game compositions to try out, with adding some elite units in the end, and it's really up to you. You know, you can do a variety of units, of course, but it's more for you to get some fun, especially into the late game where every single battle may become the same. So if you have some variety in your armies, maybe that happens to you as it happens to me. I become more interested, and I try to ensure that this army also works, and I'll see how it can work. So Valkia, she's a very simplified version of the Warriors of Chaos. All she does is ensuring that you have a way to keep fighting, to keep raising, but she does that very well with her movement buffs and overall focus on aggressiveness. It is also a nice experience with Khorne units to have some magic supporting them, as you do have casters that can follow your units into battle. So watching Khorne Chosen get even more buffs in battle due to a well-timed spell is just insanely rewarding. So your army consists, for the most part, of great infantry, great cavalry, average missiles, great monsters and single entities, good flyers. It does rely on upgrading units and requires time for the elite troops. So replenishment is great, especially considering the climate. You don't have any issues with that, and you should not have many issues always having great armies and a lot of momentum to continue conquering and raising. So, due to all this, I believe it is time to follow Valkia the Bloody into battle.